This YNW Melly trial is finally about to wrap up, and Melly's fate is looking as sealed as it can be. This is the exact moment when Melly realized that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Back in October 2018, things went crazy with YNW Melly and his crew. They were just chilling at a recording studio, having a blast, not knowing tragedy was about to strike. After leaving the studio, things took a dark turn. YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser got shot and lost their lives. It hit everyone like a ton of bricks. YNW Portland had to deal with the aftermath, rushing their lifeless bodies to the hospital, claiming it was a drive-by shooting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But you know how it goes, the truth always comes out. The authorities didn't take it lightly and hit them with first-degree murder charges for Sack and Juvie. It turned into a crazy legal mess that they could not ignore. Then on February 13th, 2019, they got busted and thrown in jail. Throughout this whole legal drama, Melly kept saying he was innocent, sticking to a not guilty plea. It was the start of a wild journey toward justice, full of uncertainty, trying to figure out what really happened that night. After what felt like forever, YNW Melly's trial finally began a little over a month ago. The state took a whopping 5 years to build their case, and now it's all unfolding in the courtroom. The stakes are high as Melly's future hangs in the balance, and the state is going all out, even seeking the death penalty, showing how seriously they view these crimes. Right from the start of the trial, they hit Melly with some major evidence. Surveillance footage showing him, Portland, and the victims all together in a car during the supposed crime. And that's not all, man. Phone data, blood spatter analysis, and a bullet casing found in the car just piled up more evidence against him. Things got pretty shaky when audio recordings of YNW Portland talking to a detective contradicted their drive-by story. The detective noticed some location discrepancies, which made things look a little fishy. Then the crime scene investigators came in, talking about searching the car used in the supposed drive-by. But the defense wasn't having any of that. They grilled him about fingerprint visibility and why they didn't test all items for DNA. They got a bit lucky when the investigator messed up handling some evidence, raising some doubts about the credibility of other findings. But one of Melly's strongest cards was the absence of the murder weapon. This was his defense, saying there's no concrete proof against him. He and his team played it cool, knowing that the lack of solid evidence would work in their favor. The first witness, Felicia Holmes, got dragged into this mess because her daughter was dating Melly at the time of the incident. The defense tried to twist her statements, saying she lied to the authorities, but it didn't lead to a mistrial. Felicia stuck by Melly's side, and that was clear win for his defense. And that's just the beginning. The trial's got a lot more in store. The second week got very exciting as some hard evidence was presented through the whole week. This FBI agent, Brendan Collins, took the spotlight talking about cell phone evidence. He analyzed phones connected to Melly and one of the victims, and the prosecutor claimed that the data put Melly super close to the victims before the incident. But the defense had a different story to tell. They raised doubts about the accuracy of the location data and even questioned if Melly was the only one using that phone. And that's not all, they also went after the DNA analysis. The prosecution brought up DNA evidence saying it proved Melly was inside the car during the shootings. But the defense was sharp. They pointed out that Melly's DNA did not match any of the other stuff they examined, poking holes in the idea of him being directly involved in the crime altogether. Oh, and get this, they brought up that Melly's affiliation with the Bloods, too. The prosecution tried to link him to the G-Shine Bloods gang with social media posts, videos, and references in his songs, but the defense fought back, saying it's just an online persona and not for real. The judge also ruled out the prosecutor's attempt to add more charges as they tried to push this double homicide as a gang-related hit. It was intense in that courtroom. And then the third week of the trial started with a bang. This sharp analyst took the stand and had everyone's jaws dropping. They reconstructed this whole thing, and what they found was mind-blowing. During the YNW Juvie postpartum checkup, they discovered this wild injury on his left cheek with tiny gunshot residue marks. And then this shooting expert came in and broke it all down for us, explaining how they traced the shot's origin and path. Here's what the big fuss was all about, though. Those shots didn't come from some random passing car. They were fired from the back seat on the driver's side. One crucial part of this trial was when Portland talked to the cops on the night Sack and Juvie got murked. His statement was shady as hell, and definitely not what he and Melly were hoping for. Let's just say he totally choked when it came to forging this.
Kind of think I know what happened, because I got information that something else happened on the east side of the city in Pembroke Parks, but, which sounds similar to your thing, But you need to tell it. You need to be straight up with us.
Borland was talking about that crazy night, claiming they were the victims of a drive-by shooting after leaving the studio, but the investigators were not buying it and started poking holes in their story, making them question if they were telling the truth. You can definitely hear the nervousness in Borland's voice during the chat with the Popos. They weren't buying some of his claims and started grilling him about the location of that supposed shooting, just trying to get to the bottom of it all. When the cops asked about the motives and conflicts, Borland got all vague and evasive. He mentioned some social media drama and beef with certain people, but he wasn't giving them straight answers. The biggest slip-up Borland made was saying that he didn't have a phone on him. That left the cops scratching their heads. You're talking about all this social media stuff, but you don't even have a phone? Some would not adding up. Borland wasn't exactly playing nice with the boys in blue, and on top of that, he was straight up lying to them. His story kept changing, which just made the investigators more frustrated with them. They made it very clear that their top priority was solving the murder of his friends, Sack and Juvie. All the other legal stuff was just secondary. They begged him to be honest, but he just kept dodging their questions, making their job a real pain in the ass. That recording shows a messy and suspicious picture. Borland was acting all sneaky and his answers were all over the place, leaving the cops wondering what's really going on here. That's definitely going to come back and haunt him when this trial starts later this year, no doubt about it. Let's dive into the courtroom drama and the latest buzz in Melly's trial. Detective Mark Moretti took the stage and broke down the case in detail, putting all eyes on the phones and their locations during the shooting. Prosecution wanted to link Melly to the car where the crime supposedly happened, and they had some fresh info to support their claim. But here's the twist. The accuracy of those phone tower records came into question. People were wondering if they could really pinpoint Melly's exact location when he was supposedly used that phone. And you know what? The defense seized the opportunity to challenge the credibility of the data. Detective Moretti spilled the beans on where Melly and his crew's phones were at the time. They analyzed how close the phones were to the shell casings and other crucial evidence, and those call records played a significant role in the whole story. But guess whose name popped up during this convo? It was none other than your boy, Fredo Bang. That raised some eyebrows about his involvement with Melly right before and after the murders. And Sack's producer, Trevon Glass, also spilled some beans, adding more layers to this unfolding drama. The courtroom was buzzing with intrigue and tension. Sack Chaser's producer spilled some juicy stuff about the studio surveillance tapes. They caught Melly, the victims, Fredo Bang, and a bunch of other dudes all piling into two cars, a Jeep Compass and a red Mitsubishi. The prosecution was all over Fredo, wanting him to testify, but Fredo refused to show up, sticking to that Fifth Amendment plea. After the studio session, Glass and his crew rolled with Melly to his place and then swung by Fredo's spot to mourn their friend's loss. But here's the crazy part. Glass noticed something weird. Melly changed his clothes after that recording session earlier that night.
Was Melly wearing the same clothes or different clothes than when you saw him at the studio?
It was a little bit, nah, he wasn't.
Nah, he wasn't. You guys
Wasn't wearing the same clothes.
Okay. Do you recall what he was wearing?
Just had on some shorts.
In the courtroom, Glass played it all cool, keeping tight-lipped and not giving away any important details when asked about what went down at Fredo's. He just said it was overwhelming grief that kept him quiet. But you know how it goes. One little thing slipped out and Melly changed his clothes from the time that they left the studio until they met up later again at Fredo's. And the prosecutor pounced on that piece of info too. Everyone in that courtroom had this one big question on their minds. Why in the hell did Melly and Borland change their clothes and cruise around for like 40 minutes instead of just rushing to the hospital to check on their injured friends? This does not make sense, man. Innocent folks would not act like that. Nobody could wrap their heads around it, and it left everyone feeling uncertain and filled with doubt. Their motives were all over the place and confusing as hell. Whatever they were up to that night, it's definitely looking hella suspicious, and their story ain't adding up much. Man, aside from the texts between Melly and Fredo Bang, the communication between Melly and others was insane. They threw so many messages in court, and it totally changed the game for Melly's trial. The prosecution was dead set on showing the jury how everything connects and spilling the truth. You won't believe it, but there's some serious family drama adding fuel to this legal fire. It's like a whole extra layer of intensity. We got a glimpse into the real deal behind Melly and his mom's crazy relationship. And Juvie's sister came in hot with her threats, even leading to a bodyguard being hired by Melly's mom. Some of those messages were super cryptic, leaving us all wondering if Melly really did something unthinkable. Melly straight up said he's evil, he's some kind of monster who just wants to be left alone, and he told everyone to go for themselves. That's heavy stuff right there, and you definitely don't want the jury seeing that. Those moments are going to stick with those most people, no doubt about it. This whole situation has just added more fuel to the fire, and it is not helping Melly's case at all. As the trial rolled on, we got a glimpse into some real-life drama within the YNW crew, and that had Melly all fired up. One thing that really stood out was his hunger for recognition and payment for his, quote, creative genius. The messages that showed in court painted a pretty intense and unresolved picture of what was going on between Melly, Sack Chaser, and the rest of the YNW crew. It was like a power struggle with Sack and Juvie trying to be the bosses of YNW, while Melly was the face of the brand. Their egos were clashing, and you could feel the tension building up. Money was also a big issue that created a rift between Melly and Sack. When you read through those texts, you could see they had disputes about cash, and it cast some shadows over their once close relationship. And then there were creative conflicts too. Melly didn't fully support Sack's artistic endeavors, while Sack claimed he played a huge role in shaping Melly's sound, adding even more drama to the mix. Sack felt overshadowed by Melly's success, even though he was on one of the original members of YNW. He was also had this weird feeling like he had this premonition that something bad was about to go down. But here's the real head scratcher. On August 30th, 2018, Melly critically tells Sack he can kill her with this "it is what it is" attitude, hinting at some soul-selling deal that got everyone raising their eyebrows and scratching their noggins. With all these revelations, you can't help but wonder what in the hell's really going on, man. After all those messages were presented in court, it's clear that they themselves had trouble understanding their issues with each other. But one thing's for sure, there was some serious bad blood between the YNW members. And all amidst all this craziness and uncertainty, those messages are becoming like gold in the trial. They might just turn this seemingly motiveless case into something way bigger than we thought. Guess what? Melly's manager jumped into an interview and added even more drama to the mix. Jameson Francois, aka 100K Track, Melly's manager, steps up and gives us his take on this whole crazy mess. He's super confident believing that they messed up big time by accusing Melly of murder. Track is standing his ground, fully convinced that the rapper is innocent, and he's got some inside info to back up his beliefs. But man, even with all that certainty, Track himself can't fully piece together what really happened on that tragic night. He's not even sure if they were at Melly's place or Fredo's after Sack and Juvie's incident.
Or Fredo house, honestly, because it was so long ago. But I remember his family was at his house. We went to his house too, so it was like a little bit. Everybody was a little bit different places and things like that. I don't remember exactly where I met him, but because I did go to both houses, so I really don't.
In this wild case, Track's revelations are making things even more complicated. His words are echoing through the courtroom, leaving us wondering if there's this whole lot more to the story than we originally thought. Just a few days ago, we saw the very last witness take the stand. He was one of Melly's buddies, who was there with him in the studio that night, and he was asked a bunch of questions too. And things started off well, but everything went downhill as soon as the prosecutor started grilling him. The defense brought Adrian to the witness stand, hoping to create an alibi for Melly. Adrian Davis spilled the beans about 3 crucial points. First, he testified that Melly was in the red Mitsubishi, not the gray Jeep Compass. Second, Melly was at home when the gang found out about Sack and Juvie's death. And lastly, he was searching for his phone because it wasn't anywhere near him. During the defense attorney's questioning, Adrian simply had to say yes to confirm these points. But man, when the prosecutor lady got a chance to question him, she showed us that he said different stuff a few years back. He acted all clueless, saying, "I couldn't remember any of the things I said before." It's like a real game of he said, she said.
Have you ever answered that question differently?
I don't think so.
If I were to show you your statement from May 5th, 2022, would that help you in answering if you'd ever said something different than what you just testified in court?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, approaching with page 33 of the statement, counsel.
Adrian's statements during the trial raised some eyebrows. He said some pretty uncommon stuff, like not remembering any of his phone numbers and how everyone from the group used each other's phones regularly. It all sounded a little bit fishy, you know? And then he pulled out the "I was intoxicated" card, claiming he couldn't remember much from that day. But when the defense attorney questioned him, he seemed to remember everything so clearly, which got people doubting his credibility. The prosecutor was all over him, trying to paint him as a liar. If he's lying, then Melly's alleged alibi goes down the drain. Honestly, it feels like the defense made a desperation move here, and folks didn't think it's gonna do much help in Melly's case. The general opinion doesn't really lean in Melly's favor. It's getting intense, and everyone's trying to figure out what really went down that night. It's all in the hands of the jury now. They're the ones who will ultimately decide Melly's fate. After all the testimony testimonies and drama in the courtroom and all these videos we've been doing, it's going to come down to what they believe and how they interpret all the evidence. And Melly himself spoke up after his friend's testimony. You could feel the tension in the air. Here's what he had to tell the judge and the jury. So for the first time in the trial, they asked Melly if he wanted to take the stand and testify in his own defense. And guess what? He didn't even hesitate, man. Melly just said, nah, I ain't testifying. He's keeping it real and sticking to his decision.
What is your decision?
I will not be testifying.
You will not be testifying.
No, sir.
Is anyone forcing you or coercing you to make this decision?
No, sir.
Anybody make any promises or on the contrary, make any threats to get you not to testify?
No, sir.
The fact that this kind of brazen murder took place is simply beyond some people. One comment online wrote, "It blows my mind a young, healthy man would commit a crime like this and now have to waste years in prison." Lastly, one person simply pointed out that there were no winners or losers in this whole thing. It's nothing short of a tragedy. I pray that God guides the jury. The truth be revealed. Condolences everyone at lost people. It's bad either way. The judge had already determined that once the jury starts talking about the verdict, they won't be able to leave their hotel. They'll pretty much be taken hostage until the final decision is made. It's very clear that Melly's defense now is trying to make it look like Melly was never in the car where his friends were shot dead. If he's out of that car, then all this hard work that the prosecutor put in trying to prove how Zach and Juvie were slain goes pretty much to waste. It wasn't Melly who did it, it was someone else. But what y'all think about this? You think their strategy is going to get them ahead and perhaps save Melly from the worst possible outcome? Or do you think his chances are pretty slim? Let us know what you think down in the comments section below. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend or two, and before you leave, remember to keep it RIZZLE.